One. This is the Source Seeker Hour. This is our 63rd episode. Hi, everybody. Look at this background we got. We got a lot of things happening. Background for the Source Seeker Hour should have been did something like this. I know that's not probably perfect English, but I'm excited about the new possibilities. And we got a great show for our new possibilities starting. This is a show that has been a long time coming. It's a very, it's a very prominent subject to talk about, but a lot of people don't talk about it. And because there is a little tension involved and there's a lot of hush hush, but I'm talking about culture rising, which we have going on now against the backdrop of the gentrification of our people. What do I mean by gentrification? I'm talking about forces coming against us that take away the strength of us as a people. Basically, that's the best way to say it. I'm talking about images on TV. I'm talking about political machinations. I'm talking about all the things that are coming against us. And if we don't watch out, the strength that we are trying to buttress and bring out will be totally attacked and weakened. I want to introduce my guests, my powerful guests that have been on with us before. And I want to introduce them and have them introduce themselves. Cassandra Barnes, super powerful sister. I just want to say that. Very strong, opinionated. She will let you know. And I want to say we're so grateful to have you again. And please share with the audience and let them know, Cassandra.
Hi, my name is Cassandra Barnes. I am a registered nurse. I have been one for well over 30 years now. My master's actually is in psychotherapy, so I am also licensed under supervision right now as a psychotherapist. And so I bring a vast area, a vast body of knowledge to the platform. I have a very comprehensive nursing background as well as mental health management background. And so I am excited to be a guest on this Source Seeker Hour yet again. So I'm looking forward to a great conversation tonight.
And you know, you bring the great conversation, and we're so blessed to have you. Thank you very much all the time. Thank you very much. Sister Kenisha, this is a very powerful subject. We always appreciate your expertise. A frequent guest, Sister Kenisha, can you share with the public?
Yes, hello. My name is Kenisha Drayton, and I am a psychotherapist. I'm an LPC, CART, which stands for Certified Anger Resolution Therapist. And I'm also a clinical telemental health provider. So I am the owner and operator of Oasis of Life Counseling. And so I'm just glad to be here today to take part in the discussion.
Thank you very much. And I want to bring this discussion to light. Again, this is our 62nd episode, but we've had a lot of things happen in the community that have brought this issue to light. Well, somebody brought a conversation about the transgender student in high school and them playing or running track, and or playing sports. Isn't that a disadvantage for those young ladies to be playing against this transgender individual? That is a part of our discussion. On so many levels, this conversation has been kind of hush-hushed, but it's a conversation that we have to have and be true about it. We all have biases. We all have stigmas. We all have different things, and we all have disabilities in ways. So we're not coming to judge, and we not want to go there. But at the same time, we want to be honest about the effect upon our community, our kids. I have 3 kids. I'm concerned about the things that impact their mind and impact their thought process. Are they getting a fair opportunity to bring out their gifts, or is somebody impacting them? There's so many things we can say it's just the parents' responsibility, but you know, parents got to work, and it's not an easy process to take out all of these pressures, these peer pressures. So from that perspective, I start this conversation. Culture rising, a time to be strong, but also the gentrification of Black people. Sister Cassandra, break it down to us. Give us your perspective of what I'm talking about.
Well, when you're looking at culture rising and the gentrification of Black people just in general, it's a very difficult subject because there are positives and negatives on both sides. No, I mean, away from the transgender issue, we'll just look at gentrification as a whole. Generally what you're gonna see is the lower income neighborhoods, the inner city neighborhoods that are not well kept, that are, for lack of a better term, ghetto type neighborhoods, low income areas being overtaken by more affluent businesses and opportunities, and people buying out property and kind of taking over those in those neighborhoods. Well, we can look at it both positively and negatively. The negative side is generally these neighborhoods are going to be more Black and brown people, you know. They're going to be homes that have been in those communities probably for 2 or 3 generations. Generally, that's where our grandparents and great grandparents lived, in those inner city, lower income neighborhoods. And then you have the influx now of the more affluent resident who has the resources to buy that property out and to give that neighborhood a uplift, so to speak, economically. Well, now you have displaced those lower income people, or you bought them out and now they've moved to other areas. But at the same time, now that area now has a new look, but it has more monies coming into that neighborhood. So there, and now that what they would maybe call run down, a dilapidated neighborhood and property now is on the uprise again. So that means that more tax dollars are going into the schools in that area, and that those areas, I know where I grew up, I didn't really grow up in a really negative place. I grew up in the Heights, but the Heights now is almost, you don't even recognize it.
Can I interject something, Sister Cassandra?
Mm-hmm.
I believe what we are, the battle that I'm talking about, the culture rising versus gentrification of Black people, is deeper than social economic though. I think it's on such a level subliminal as well as overt, and it crosses the rich Black people just as well as poor Black people, because it's getting into the mind.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, yeah, it is. I mean, you can even see it. You can even see the effects of it even with this election that we have, where some of the more affluent or the wealthier entertainers are endorsing Donald Trump versus the mainstream Black community, that's a sign of it, because when it's all said and done, everything at the bottom of everything is economics. The base of mostly anything you do is about economics. Okay. The higher the economic ladder that you climb, it's less about black and white, so to speak, and more about economics, and economics. So the lines get blurred the higher up the scale you go as it relates to culture. So when you're dealing with mentality, mindset, the more you rise economically, and this is what I was relating to with the rappers and different people, entertainers supporting Donald Trump, because the more you rise economically, the more blurred those lines become. You
Well,
know, it's
if
just,
I can say, are you familiar with Anthony Bourdain and
yeah,
okay, this was a rich man, rich white
yeah,
man
mm,
who seemingly had everything.
mm,
And he flew around the world and could have a different girlfriend in every country if he wanted to, and had
right,
enough money
right,
and you know, all of those trappings.
mm,
So what I'm saying is even deeper than that. You know, you talk about some of the black celebrities that follow Trump. I mean, you can be rich and crazy, you know, and you know, that's a
mm.
perspective, you know, but I'm just saying your socioeconomic status does not necessarily mean you're gonna be happy automatically.
Not, I mean, not at all. And that's very true. I mean, if we're dealing with depression, I personally, as a mental health professional, choose not to use the term crazy, because to me, it just gives such a negative connotation. But if you're
I
gonna,
agree, I apologize.
I mean, you don't have to apologize to me. It's just my own personal preference. But at any rate, when you're dealing with someone like Anthony Bourdain or Kate Spade or the comedian
Robert Williams.
Robert Williams, all of them that have committed suicide, it's a deeper issue. It's deep. It's a depression issue. It's not, or it's not an economic issue. Obviously, it's not an economic issue because all of them were very economically successful. That's a whole nother conversation when we're dealing with mental health issues related to depression and suicide. But when we're talking about gentrification, we're talking economics. The very definition of gentrification is when a community takes over another community or entity for the purpose of increasing its economic base, you know, its rise in its economic status. That's the whole purpose of gentrification. So when you're dealing with gentrification on any level, you're dealing with the uprising of economics in a particular area or geographical location, neighborhood, or whatever the case may be. So when you're dealing with culture rising, you're dealing with the economic rising of, if we're dealing with our culture, the economic rising of our culture as a result of gentrification. You know, but gentrification at its base definition is economic uplifting and economic empowerment. So we have to deal with it from an economic perspective when we're dealing with gentrification. But I think it has both meanings. I mean, I think it has positive and negative connotations. Yes, it displaces a lot of lower socioeconomic people that have, but then, you know, you can make the argument that, well, yes, they owned all of this property, but they didn't have the economic uh, stability to keep the properties up, or they weren't able to maintain the properties in a lot of instances, which is why you had a lot of rundown properties and in the way that they were managed. So you can say that when the turnaround came to where they started putting dollars in these communities to try to reestablish them, it was a positive, because now you have economic growth and development in these areas, but at the same time, you've displaced those former residents. So, it's a difficult discussion to have. If we're honest about it, it's a difficult discussion to have, because we have displaced a lot of lower socioeconomic residents as a result of gentrification. But at the same time, those same neighborhoods are now very economically progressive neighborhoods. So,
Okay, I just want to interject one thing. As Black people, we have been through many psychological scars, of course. So we have to come to a point where we build a self-love, and then we can start to overcome some of these counteraction things that have been coming at us for as long as we've been in the American continent. So it's a psychological thing. And then, yeah, we can build that economic base, but we can hold it because we have self-love.
right.
If we don't love ourselves, we're going to let it tear down and not take care of it. But if we have self-love, we'll take care of those economic things that we have attained. Sister Kenisha, lot to talk about.
Yes,
What you feel?
well, with gentrification, I remember a few years back how I used to attend the meetings about, like in third ward area, where they talk about the community making changes and stopping gentrification. And it wasn't only in the third ward communities, it was in Acres Home and Fifth Ward and other surrounding areas such as Sunnyside. And one thing that I have noticed among the African American community, gentrification is a really scary word. I see a lot of people cringe at the thought of gentrification. And, maybe for valid reasons of their own, because one of the worst fears that I would hear amongst African Americans in the community is that they're going to jack up the prices to rent, things that are going to just change, but one thing about us is that some of us, not all, but some of us have this sense of learned helplessness, that's been passed down from generation to generation. And due to that, a lot of us are afraid of change and what can help us the most, because we come from neighborhoods, parents, grandparents who constantly talk about what we can afford. And in some families, we don't talk about, you go to school, graduate, go to college, and get you a house built. You know, if you where I come from, because I didn't come from a family where we talked about getting homes built and all of that. I had to learn that in other areas. And see, the first thing that comes to their mind is fear. Well, they're trying to push us out and take over. Well, to prevent the gentrification, why don't we just stay there, commit to building it ourselves and making it a better place to live? Let's put our money together, and I believe they call that cooperative economics.
Yes.
Buy the block back.
Mm-hmm.
And see, because of that fear of gentrification or buying our own blocks back, the neighborhoods are looking the same as they have for many years. Mm-hmm. And then, with that being stated, we blame our representatives for it, for our neighborhoods looking the way they're looking. But we're the main ones who are stopping it when people do try to change it and make it a better place for us.
Yes, I understand both lady's perspective. I want to talk about gentrification. I understand the economic parts and the community parts. I'm talking about the overall, I guess, takeover of the mind from an image standpoint, from the economic standpoint of they are the ones that are quote unquote in charge of most industries. Yes, that is starting to change, and it's a battle going on. Some people like Black Lives Matter, other people don't. If we look at the election that we are encountering right now, we see how divided the country is. Half the people like what's going on, where certain segments of the population are kind of being disenfranchised. But when I'm talking about gentrification, I'm talking about the overall aspect of the impact upon the Black community. When I go to the fast food restaurant and I see that young man in there with his earrings on, talking in a manner, I'm saying to myself, hey, that's not necessarily who he wanted to be. You know, when I have to talk to my son and tell him about these images, tell him about these things, tell him about somebody that may be just trying to get him alone. You know, I got to have these real conversations. There are so many things. There were, I'm gonna talk about some of the things I talked about in the article. Kevin Hart, they jumped on him in the Oscars about saying that he would whoop up his son if his son turned out to be gay. Now, maybe that was a wrong way to put it. However, he has a right to say that. He's the father of his child. I think, you know, you're going a little bit too far when you're saying he cannot say that. Now, he's not saying that, you know, he's going to permanently harm his son or something like that. So that's my perspective. And there's so many other things that are going on within our culture. Lovecraft, have either of you seen that? The show?
No.
Ladies, you got to go see that. But there's two incidents that happened within the Lovecraft story. The first one was they had a male sex scene. Now, that was abhorrent to me, and I turned away. Now, normally I turn it off, but the show is so good that I thought I might miss something. Then there was another scene where the tall blonde girl was engaged in kissing and romance with the dark-skinned Black girl. And that seemed kind of titillating. Where is this cultural thing? What is okay? Well, is that normal? What is okay? Where? Give us both perspectives. What do you feel on that? Cassandra?
Well, for me, with my background being as a Christian woman with biblical principles and the way that I live my life, try to live my life according to biblical principles, I cannot personally say that it is wrong. I personally believe that it is wrong, and I make no mistakes about that. Being a healthcare professional for 33 years, I make no mistakes about saying in my personal, and not even my opinion, just based on biblical principles, that it is wrong. But given the fact of it, even though I do believe that it's wrong, I still believe that people have a right to be whoever they choose to be. Now, it took me a very, very long time to get to the point of being open-minded about certain lifestyles that contradicted what I consider biblical principle. It took a long time for me to get there. I remember early on in my nursing career, if I had certain patients that were of that certain lifestyle, it would be very difficult for me. But as I've grown and as I've matured, then I do believe people have a right to be who they are. Okay. And I try very hard not to judge, and I definitely don't make a difference in when I'm providing care to them. Their lifestyle is something that they have to reconcile. And just like, kind of the cliche is between them and God, it ultimately will be between them and God. It has nothing to do with us. It has, the thing that I don't like is that they seemingly have to put it in your face so significantly. My thing is just be who you are. I don't understand having to put it in your face the way that they are putting it in your face now. But I do respect their right to love whom they choose, to be in relationship whom they choose. I'm trying to get to the marriage part. And in actuality, they have a right to be married to whomever they want to be married to. It's still, doesn't have anything to do with us, but it's just, reconciling that in your mind, in our mind. And then we have to recognize that this world is doing what this world does. This world is shaped in sin, shaped in iniquity. And so you're gonna have sin in this world. You're gonna have iniquity in this world, and not just the homosexual, transgender platform, but even all other areas of sin, fornication and adultery, and all other areas that we have to reconcile. We have to deal with from a real place. So I'm not someone that would actually treat somebody differently at this point because of it. It's not something that I would myself partake in. I would never bash anybody or make anybody feel less than because of it, but I can't ascribe to it either. I can't promote it or condone it because I will not compromise my Christian belief system for anybody or anything, even my profession or anybody else. I am who I am, but I will respect their right to be who they are, and they can deal with it, before God, in their own way and in their own terms. That's just how I look at it.
Yes, ma'am. I want to share the genesis of the conversation that we have in here. Uh, a lot of times, just like you expressed your opinion there, we should have the right to express our opinion. I'm not judging. This show is not judging. Everybody has a right to love who they love. It's just putting pressure on somebody for expressing, hey, I don't like that.
Yeah.
Right.
We should be able to say that.
Right.
And not, get bashed or anything. That's my opinion. If one of my children does go that particular way, I'm gonna love them. That doesn't say I have to appreciate and like that, but I'm still gonna love them and gonna find a way to give them the best love I can. And so, Sister Kenisha, where do you see the big perspective of this conversation in the context of the images that are coming in and how it can affect the strength of the community?
Well, the LGBT images, I mean, they have been normalized. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not hidden like it used to be anymore. I mean, we have young people as young as 11 years old who are identifying with being lesbian, gay, bisexual. You know, they're identifying themselves with the LGBT already. So, you know,
I see that's a issue that I have, because they should have at least enough time to mature a little bit and understand different perspectives of the world before they are inundated in that perspective.
Exactly.
well, see, here's the thing. Speaking from a mental health clinical perspective, the brain is not developed enough to experience the effects of emotions at that level of love. You know, that is a factor. You know, especially if you're familiar with child growth and development. And you know, there are many families out there who are extremely appalled, especially in the Black community, when they learn that one of their loved ones, like a child who's under the age of 18, is already identifying with the lifestyle. So, I mean, clinically, I call it the alternative lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Although it is, you know, the LGBT community. And see, one thing that I would do is that, you know, when I have my families and my couples, you know, people who are appalled at the lifestyle, the number one thing that we have to be careful with as clinicians is that we cannot be judgmental towards them or speak of our own biases. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
have to check all of that at the door. And then a lot of times, you know, if you find it to be difficult, you know, that's okay. Everything is not for every clinician. And see, that's the thing about therapy. You know, once you have someone who identifies with the LGBT community, it is okay to refer them out to someone who would specialize and take them on. That is okay because there's no such thing as one therapist fitting all, you know. So that's why we had the option to refer them out. But however, you know, what I would apply is what we would call internal family systems therapy, where we're integrating the family as a whole so that they can be able to work through those challenges of their loved one identifying with that community. Now, if we have a family who has a child under the age of 18, for example, now the parents can be like, I don't like this, you know, with my child liking girls or my son liking boys. Now, here's what I would say to them. If you see that you have raised them in the church with Christianity, those morals, you know, according to the Bible, that's fine because with you being the parent, you have to take control of your household. You're the one who sets the tone to let them know this is what our family is going to be like. This is what our belief system is going to be like. And it's okay for them to teach their children their morals in their home because that child is abiding by that parent's rules. You know, is that going to change that child's mind? Probably not. We don't know that. But the parent can still train them in the way that they should go. And I give them the feedback and the steps that they can take with teaching them from a moral perspective, you know. However, if their child is still going the way that they want to go, okay, how can we still continue to love them unconditionally without imposing views on each other? How can we continue to accept one another and make each other feel loved? Because really, at the end of the day, it's love that changes them.
Mm-hmm.
That love would change them. And so, what I do is provide the tools and helping the family through accepting the unacceptable or things that they cannot change. Because right now, if they're young and underage, you know, you could tell them, okay, well, you cannot go to a bar that's, you know, for LGBT community, or you can't go to this party and that party. There are parents who would do that. But what do you do when they become grown and you don't have any control over that and they live in your home?
Yes, I totally understand. And it's a deep perspective that parents and everybody has to deal with. We talk about you talked about raising them up, exposing them to God, exposing them to the morals and so forth. But there are other forces. Just like when we're in school, we have peer pressure.
Yeah.
You have media pressure. You have all kind of. I tell you, you even have a direct peer pressure in the schools. You might have a group of young men over here that they'll get this boy in the restroom and they will mess with him in such a way and scar his mind up. I mean, even at my age, I've had incidents with people. It's a long story, but you have all kinds of situations that happen. And our overall culture, if it becomes normalized, as you stated, that is detrimental to the growth of the community, in my opinion. But we have another, let me say this first.
Yes.
We have another force fighting against that in a lot of ways. The cult of the Black Lives Matter movement is trying to fight against that. And it is two opposing forces going on, and both are strong. And so it's like a battle royal. You want to interject, Kenisha?
Yes, please. You know, where you talk about the LGBT images where you said it's detrimental to the Black male or the Black growth. Well, you know, one thing I can point out from my experience, I believe it's unforgiveness that's detrimental to the effect on the Black growth. And I say that because, you know, learning from members in church, in my profession, in my own personal life, a lot of our children and young adults who have chosen the alternative lifestyle, you know, if you really peel back the layers of that onion, a lot of them have been sexually molested by family members. You know, a lot of them have been exposed to the alternative lifestyle, excuse me, by their family and friends. They may have a mother or a father who identify with the LGBT community. It's a number of different things, you know, where, you know, especially where, you know, the child molester is forgiven quicker than the person who was victimized, you know? And so that's just for an example, because there's many reasons why they choose their lifestyle. And I'm not going to say that's the only one. But sometimes if you identify the root cause, and you know, they may make the choice to understand, well, you know, maybe that's why I'm like that. We don't know. We can't force them to be like, well, I choose this alternative lifestyle because this and that happened to me. They have to come to that conclusion. But I'm just telling you what I have witnessed and what I saw over the years. You know, a lot of people are looking for their mother and father in these relationships. Some of them is just a choice that they have. You know, it's just their own very choice for it. But, you know, with that unforgiveness part, you know, where we had the baby boomers raise this generation, you know how we talk about, you know, who raised these children these days? You know, I've even been guilty of saying that. Who raised y'all? Well, our grandparents and our parents raised them because a lot of us come from a generation where children are seen and they're not heard. You know, we're taught not to have emotions. You know, therefore we end up growing up to be adults who are poor communicators because you're taught not to have feelings. We were taught as long as all you have to do is clean up behind yourself, make good grades. You know, you don't have any worries. You know, and see, when a parent tell a child that, they're talking from a place of bitterness and survival. And when you're living in that place of bitterness or survival, you know, it's going to be hard. You're going to miss the key points of growth and development and what children are facing.
I just want to say, this is not a new battle that we're facing. I mean, we've been dealing with this the times, even early Reconstruction or early 1900s, they would make caricatures of Black people, and it would impact our mind in all of these ways. Now, you talked about abuse. Yes, that's a real thing. Let me not say thing, that is a real something that goes on in all communities, not just our community. And that does have psychological scars and impacts in that particular way. But I just say it's even deeper than that, because the person who was the abuser, he got those images and thoughts from somewhere. He got what he had in his mind to go and victimize somebody. He got that in his mind from somewhere. And what I'm saying in the overall, if we can try to heal that abuser before he does that, then that's what I'm talking about. How can we, across the board, get a better community that doesn't try to abuse, that builds a stronger community? That's what I'm talking about. Sister Cassandra, interject on this.
Okay, well, a couple of things. I wanted to go back to the Kevin Hart statement that you made, as it relates to his right to have his own opinion. I first of all believe 100% that he has the right to have his own opinion about what he would choose to do with his son. But because this community is so powerful, especially in the entertainment industry, that they use that as a threat, to say he shouldn't say that. He has every right to say that, as you stated. And who are we to tell him how he should raise his child? And I think it has gone too far to when we try to make people agree with we try to make people agree with lifestyle choices just because we get offended if they don't agree with them. He doesn't have to agree with that. He doesn't have to say it's okay, or him or anybody else for that matter. And I do think it's wrong when societies and groups of people use their power and their influence to try to strong arm somebody else related to their opinion. They have a right to their opinion. If nobody has to agree with it, it's just who they are and what they choose to do with their own children. Even as it relates to the transgender issue, as it relates to sports, that's a very significant issue that really needs to be looked at. Because if you are a female identifying as male and you want to be on a football team, you're still going on a field in a female body, whether you identify with it or not. The female body is not naturally built to sustain that level of physical abuse.
Yes,
It's just not. And
it seems
so,
logical to me.
exactly, so it's some very real issues around that. I'll give you an instance that I'm aware of. As a nurse, there is a patient who identified as male who was born female. Okay. So this patient was diagnosed with breast cancer. But because everything with the insurance company was designated as male, they refused to treat the breast cancer because they were like, no, it wasn't breast cancer. It was some other cancer that was historical, like ovarian or uterine, something like that. And they literally refused to treat it because this patient was a patient of one of my best friends, actually. And because they said this is a male, so how can this patient have uterine cancer or whatever cancer it was that would be specific to females? So then you had a lot of legal issues. Now the patient is dying because the cancer is spreading while they're fighting this out, right? So there's a lot of dynamics around this issue. Even when I went to have my surgery, a couple of weeks ago now almost. And when they were doing the registration, they're like, how do you identify as male or female? Those are questions we never, ever had to deal with.
Well, here in Houston, we have had the restroom situation with the transgender.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, of course, this issue gets discussed here in Houston, because a part of our community identifies, well, of course, a lot of people across the country, not just here in Houston, but it's a big issue. And just like you mentioned, I believe we should have the right to express ourselves and not to necessarily get attacked. Now, they have a right to express themselves too.
Right.
It's just, are you going to do it in a bully way? Or are you going to do it in a reasonable way?
Exactly.
We are getting closer to the end of our show, so I want to make sure everybody gets there. We still got quite a bit of time, but I want you to if you have a powerful point, something that you really want to discuss, something that you want to bring out, let's go ahead and share that. Sister Kenisha.
Well, it was a really interesting topic, with gentrification and the LGBT community, that discussion. I mean, it is a sensitive topic, emotions runs high, when it comes to that particular subject, and it's just something that we all have to learn how to really be able to navigate, without offending others and without others offending us. I mean, we are living in a different society today.
Yes.
Things are normalized today where people used to keep a secret. Some things you wouldn't learn about a person until they're in their deathbed or getting ready to be buried, But it's like we have to be able to evolve in these times at the same time holding on to our belief system for ourselves, So without, it's like we have to, just really roll with the punches, and without it compromising our own belief systems and values. But at the end of the day, it's love that would deliver a person, that love and understanding that we show them, and sometimes that's what changes hearts and minds.
I agree. And that's why I always talk about self-love. And the whole thing I'm talking about is us having a opportunity to learn self-love without all of the things. Now, everybody's going to have distractions and obstacles, but I think we have so many, and we have to be aware that these things they are affecting us. They do have ramifications for our mind. If my son looks at something over and over, he plays a video game over and over and over and over, is that going to desensitize him to the actions that's going on in that video game over time? He plays it 24 hours. Is his mind going to think in that particular way? So that's what I'm talking about from a psychological level. Now, can we find a way to have self-love despite these things going on? Sister Cassandra, I want to ask you a specific question, and I want everybody to interject. I saw one time that you said, I believe you said, now correct me if I'm wrong, that where are the men that will pay all the bills of a sister? Did you say that?
Oh, absolutely. I said it. Because
Okay,
I
well,
was afraid. Oh, I'm sorry. I,
I want to ask, as of course, a man that would be asked to do the bills, how is that fair in this new world of 2020 that we live in that has so much pressures and different things? Now, and I talk about this in the article was about Serena Williams, the interracial marriage of Serena Williams. Now, what she said, there were no black men. I tell her, hey, do you understand what black men are going through? And yes, there are not as many black men that can get on your level, but you have to maybe look a little harder, maybe sacrifice a little bit more. And yes, you would probably pay a majority of the bills. So with that discussion, why is it fair?
okay. So you saw that on my Facebook page, and that was a very heated discussion. I'm
Rightfully so.
Yeah, I'm a person that I give men the privilege to be men. You know, I extend them the grace to be men. Okay. I don't care if it's 2020. I don't care if whatever is going on, I give men the grace to be men. And I love, I'm not a hardcore women's liber type person. And what the question was if a man pays half of the bill, if the man and the wife split half of the bills 50-50, can he still be known as or considered a provider? And I said, my mind doesn't even function in a way that I would pay half of the bills. That's just not how my mind operates, mainly because I was raised by a real man who handled everything in the household. It had nothing to do with how much money was generated by my grandmother, who actually had adopted us from my mother, who was their natural daughter. So they are our grandparents and our parents, right? Um, and yes, we owned businesses and things of that nature. So my family was very wealthy. But even then, I think when a man naturally gets his value from providing for his family, I just think from an emotional standpoint, that's where he receives much of his value from. And I'm concerned when men are so um uh verbal about their right not to do that. Okay, when you look down at the entire breakdown of the family, when men start being okay with not being men, that's a problem. And that's where you see a lot of breakdown. Even if I don't have a husband that can fully support the house, he's definitely not going to have a mindset that I'm going to pay 50-50 half of the bills. That mindset is problematic on so many ways. And I'm going to tell you another reason that's problematic, because now you have two people in the house standing toe to toe with one another, which is why we have the divorce rate like it is, which is why we have the I work like you do, I do the same like you do, because you're there's a lot of psychological. See, I never came up in a house where my grandmother was challenging like that to my grandfather. I came up in a very, very happy environment, a wholesome environment. Now you have families that are very financially prosperous families in our community, but you have more depression than you've ever had. You have children that are just straight up angry, mean, and depressed because it's so much tension and so much craziness with everybody jockeying for position, and the wife jockeying, the man jockeying, and everybody's talking about, well, I pay the bills like you do, and I do all of that. And so we're not gonna go. They're clearly defined roles, and I will be happy to be by myself. I would not compromise that because they're clearly defined roles, I think, that worked historically. And the reason why it's not working today, because those defined roles have been dismissed. So when you're dealing with culture, when you're dealing with culture rising, everything because we're making more money, I make a significant amount of money. I've given a lot of money away. But I'm still a woman, and I'm still will be received by a man that can handle the socioeconomics that come along with covering me. I'm not excessive in my materialism or the way that I live materially, but I'm not meager either, so for me to make, so you would have to have some financial resources to be a partner with me. But at the same time, I don't make any excuses for expecting men. I give them the luxury. I give men the luxury to be men. I don't emasculate them in that way. I let them joyfully support the house, the home.
Blessings for your comment. That has so many answers, so many different points that I can bring out, but I'm gonna save it because I want Sister Kenisha to come in. Share as long as you would like. We are at the end, so after you share, go ahead and tell people where they can reach you.
Okay. Well, a lot of people come, from homes in this generation where they were broken. We don't have the traditional homes that we used to have anymore. And in our community, some of our brothers are so used to seeing their mothers be superwoman and do everything on her own to where, it's just become natural for him to believe that a woman needs to pay 50-50 because they're so used to seeing it. And so my question is, if you didn't see your mom having to do it all and be superwoman on her own, would you be able to do those things and take care of a household without requiring your wife or significant other to pay the bills? And see, I know today, there's more of us who are making money. Some of us make more money than our partners do. And, we do have to step back and allow men to be men. Chivalry is not dead. It's just not required anymore. Most men that I know of, who are men that's, a man's man, he would typically get offended for a woman trying to pay for his dinner.
Right.
I remember before I entered, into marriage, it's like, they wouldn't be too, how can I say this word? They wouldn't be too pleased for a woman to pay for that.
Sister Kenisha, now I've got to say, I recall you saying several times in several conversations that, hey, whatever works for you all. So in some situations, the man can pay all the bills. In some situations, the woman's happy to pay all the man's bills.
That's true. And it's what works for, hold on, it's what works for that family as well. But I'm just saying, traditionally speaking,
right.
some of the men have been so used to women being superwoman and doing everything in this generation rather, that is become a norm. It's a shock to them when a woman says, well, I need you to pay all the bills. Let me sit back and be pretty. But it depends on
I'm saying it's infeasible for most situations. So I'm saying that yes, when the man was in the 60s and 70s and up into the 80s, like my father, yeah, my mama didn't have to work. My mother didn't have to work. He could take care of the house. Now it was a burden, but he was able to do that. I'm saying in this new culture, it's not as feasible. And if the woman is beholden to, hey, a man has to pay all the bills, then it's a conflict. And when he does it, when he's a little short, she's upset. So, I mean,
Can you
go.
hold on, can you let me finish though?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me
Yes, ma'am.
finish. Now, yes, we do have issues with men succumbing to the traditional roles because of our environment today,
Right.
you know. But see, now we have more of us women who have careers. See, I was already established, you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So
Mhm.
my thing is that I work too hard in college, internships, and all of that stuff to just get married and sit at home and do nothing with my education. I'm going to work. You know what I'm saying? So my thing is that if you want to allow that man to be a man, and you know, you're not taking anything from him, first of all, by being a woman who knows how to go to work and get her own. You're not taking that away from him by being
Right.
a man. But thing is, you never know what happens. You know, for instance, this COVID-19 pandemic, you know, how many people you know who are married, one of them have lost their job, like
Mhm.
the man loses his job. And at such a time as this, I don't see anything wrong with the wife or the partner taking up the slack. You know,
Right.
there's no problem in that. And
Mhm.
everybody will have their roles. What if that woman makes more money than her husband? You see what I'm saying? And then we have instances where men are paying child support, so much of it to where he barely has a dime left to even support anyone. But see, it's what works for that couple and the amount of trust that they have in each other to work as a team, you know? So it all depends, you know, about financial literacy, for one, you know, whose role is it to do what? You know, what is both of y'all's situations? This is why before you get married, it's always best to know each other's financial status. So you can be able to determine whose role is to do what.
Yes, ma'am. We are at the end, but as you all see, it got a little heated there, which was a good thing. This whole subject and this last part related to it also, because when we're talking about the culture rising, we're talking about having a strong community. And traditionally, we did have a strong family unit, but we have a uh, new world that we basically are growing into. And so we have to find those adjustments to pull ourselves together in such a way that'll be beneficial for our growth. We're at the end. Sister Cassandra, can you share briefly and then tell people how they can reach you?
But my name is Cassandra, and I am in the process of launching. I cannot practice without supervision at this point, but I still have my my center is the Victoria Barnes Mental Health and Wellness Center, and so I still am available to do counseling, and I love speaking with people, talking to people. I've done presentations for various groups. So my Facebook page is the Victoria Barnes Mental Health and Wellness Center. My private page is Cassandra D. Barnes. And I would just love to communicate. So reach out as you will, and I'll be happy to respond back.
Thank you, thank you. And I guarantee you, we're going to talk about this conversation more. And because all of this goes together.
Yeah.
What I talked about with culture rising and gentrification, all of that goes together. And especially Black relationships and how we can have stronger relationships. Sister Kenisha, finish us out, share how people can reach you. And if you want to make a comment about what we've been talking about, please do.
Well, we had a really nice conversation, I must say. I really enjoyed it. And but yes, again, my name is Kenisha Graves Drayton. I'm a counselor, LPC, and a certified anger resolution therapist. clinical telemental health provider, and I am the owner of Oasis of Life Counseling, and I can be reached on my Facebook page as well, Oasis of Life Counseling, and my Instagram page, Oasis of Life Counseling. And you can also reach me at my email directly to me, and that's at oasisoflifecounseling@hotmail.com. If you have any further questions, comments, or concerns.
Thank you very much. This has been a powerful show. Our 63rd next week. The New World Within, Coronavirus, Race, and the Power of God, hosted by Bishop George Sanders. That's next week. And we're going to continue every week. As you see, we got some new little things, little gifts behind us, and we're going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to have great guests, great conversations. And of course, I'll be contacting both of you all about the next episode of this. And we're going to have a lot more people to talk about it. I think this is one of the most important conversations that we can have in our community. So I'm going to keep bringing it to you here on the Sourceseeker Hour. I thank everybody. Thank our guests, Cassandra Barnes, Kenisha Drayton. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.